When I was 18 years old, my mother stood in our living room and told her prayer circle that I was the family mistake. My father laughed, pointed a finger in my face, and said I would never amount to anything more than a burden. That night, I left with $32 in my pocket and a backpack half full of clothes. 12 years later, the same people who threw me away like garbage showed up at my front door shivering in the rain, begging me to let them in. They had no idea that the mansion they were standing in front of belonged to me, or that the woman they were about to hand their wet coats to was not a servant, but the CEO of a multi-million-dollar logistics empire. My name is Nia. I am 30 years old, and this is the story of how my family tried to destroy me for the second time, only to find out that I had become the one thing they could never control. Before I tell you what happened when I opened that door, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you have ever had to rebuild your life from scratch after the people who were supposed to love you turned their backs. It was 8 o'clock on a Friday night in Atlanta. A severe thunderstorm warning had turned the sky a bruised purple, and rain was hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of my living room. I was enjoying the silence, a rare luxury for someone running a company as large as Helix Solutions. I was wearing my favorite oversized cashmere sweater and leggings, scrolling through quarterly reports on my tablet when the security intercom buzzed. I frowned, checking the camera feed on my phone. A beat-up sedan was idling at my gate. I did not recognize the car, but when I zoomed in on the people standing in the rain, pressing the buzzer repeatedly, my blood ran cold. It was them. My mother Bernice, my father Clarence, my brother Marcus, and a woman I did not recognize. They looked ragged, soaked, and desperate. For a moment, I considered leaving the gate locked. I considered calling security to have them removed. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. I buzzed them in. By the time they reached the front porch, I had composed myself. I opened the massive oak double doors and stood there blocking the entrance. Nia. My mother said my name not with affection, but with annoyance, as if I had kept her waiting for 10 minutes instead of 12 years. Move out of the way, girl. The mosquitoes are going to get in. She pushed past me before I could say a word. My father followed, dragging 2 heavy waterlogged suitcases across my imported Italian marble floors. Marcus came next, looking older and heavier than I remembered his former athlete's body gone soft. He was holding hands with a blonde woman who looked around my foyer with wide, calculating eyes. "This is incredible," the blonde woman said, shaking rain off her umbrella onto my rug. "Nia, right. Marcus told me you were working for some wealthy people in Atlanta, but I did not realize you were living in a place like this. How long have you been the housekeeper here?" The question hung in the air. Housekeeper. She thought I was the help. I looked at my simple clothes, my bare face, and then at the opulence surrounding us. It made sense. In their minds, Nia the mistake could never own a place like this. Nia the failure could only be here if she was serving someone else. I looked at Marcus, waiting for him to correct her. He just smirked, that familiar arrogant twist of his lips that used to make me feel small. "Yeah, Nia," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "This is my wife Becky. We need a place to crash for a few weeks. The owners are out of town, right? You usually have the run of the place on weekends." I did not answer. I did not correct them. A cold, hard clarity settled over me. If they wanted to believe I was the help, I would let them. It would make what was coming so much sweeter. "Well, do not just stand there like a statue," my mother snapped. She shoved a dripping wet duffel bag into my chest. The water soaked instantly into my cashmere sweater. "Take this to the laundry room. It smells like mildew. And be careful not to drip on the wood floors further in. I assume you know how to clean them properly." The weight of the bag in my arms triggered a memory so vivid it almost buckled my knees. I was 18 again, standing on the front porch of my childhood home. It was raining then too. My mother had thrown this exact same duffel bag at me, telling me to get out because I had refused to go to the community college. She chose opting instead to start an internship at a logistics firm. "You are a stain on this family," she had screamed. "Do not come back until you learn your place." I gripped the handle of the wet bag, my knuckles turning white. I learned my place, Mother, I thought. My place is the owner of this estate. My place is the woman who could buy and sell this entire family 10 times over. I will take care of it, I said, my voice steady. Good, Becky said, kicking off her muddy boots and leaving them right in the middle of the hallway. And seriously, is there anything to eat? We have been driving for 6 hours and I am starving. Do the owners keep the fridge stocked, or do we need to order pizza? The audacity was breathtaking. They had invaded my home, insulted me within seconds of arriving, and were now demanding dinner. I will see what is in the kitchen, I said, turning away so they would not see the fire in my eyes. As I walked down the hallway, I heard my father's voice booming behind me. Look at this architecture, Bernice. It is gaudy, no taste, not like the home we had on Elm Street. New money always tries too hard. The irony was rich. Their home on Elm Street had been foreclosed on 3 years ago. I knew because I was the one who bought the lien anonymously just to make sure they did not end up on the street immediately, though they never knew it was me. I went into the kitchen, a chef's dream of stainless steel and quartz, and started pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. I could have ordered catering. I could have called a private chef. But I wanted to see how far they would push it. I made a simple pasta dish, chopping vegetables with a rhythm that matched my racing heart. From the living room I could hear them settling in, the sound of my television being turned on, the clinking of bottles from my bar cart. They were making themselves at home in a house they thought belonged to a stranger. When I brought the food out to the dining room, they were already seated. Becky picked up a fork and poked at the pasta with a look of distaste. No meat, she asked, looking at me with a sneer. I guess the budget for the staff is pretty tight. Huh? I am pregnant, Nia. I need protein. You cannot expect me to eat peasant food. There is chicken in the sauce, I said, setting a pitcher of water on the table. My mother sighed, shaking her head. You always were lazy in the kitchen, Nia. Even after 12 years, you have not learned how to serve a proper meal. I hope you treat your employers better than this, or you won't have this job for long. I stood by the wall watching them eat my food, drink my wine, and dissect my life. So Marcus said, talking with his mouth full, "We are going to need the guest rooms prepared. Becky and I will take the master suite if the owners are not back soon. We need the space." "The master suite is locked," I lied smoothly. "The owners have security cameras in there. You will have to use the guest wing." Becky rolled her eyes. "Fine, but I expect fresh sheets. Egyptian cotton if they have them. My skin is very sensitive." As they ate, the conversation turned to why they were here. I stayed silent, blending into the background just as I had done for the first 18 years of my life. "It is just a small misunderstanding," Marcus was telling our father. "The company is overreacting. Once I get the 50,000 to the lawyer, this whole embezzlement thing goes away." Embezzlement. My ears pricked up. "It is a witch hunt," my mother said soothingly, patting Marcus's hand. "They are just jealous of your talent, sweetheart. You were the star quarterback. People have been trying to bring you down since high school." "They do not understand finance," Marcus said, taking a large gulp of wine. "I was just moving funds around to optimize investments. Medicor is going to thank me when this blows over." I froze. Medicor. That was a subsidiary of Helix Solutions. My company. My brother had just admitted to embezzling money from my own corporation. He had no idea that the CEO of the parent company he had stolen from was standing 10 feet away, refilling his water glass. "We just need to lay low for a while," Marcus continued, lowering his voice. "Until the warrant is recalled. Atlanta is big enough. They will never look for us here, especially not in a house like this." "We are safe here," Bernice agreed. "The Lord provided this sanctuary. And Nia, well, at least she is useful for something finally." I walked back into the kitchen, my hands trembling with rage. They were fugitives. They were hiding out in my house to escape charges for stealing from my company. And my mother saw this as divine intervention. I leaned against the counter, taking deep breaths. I could call the police right now. I could have them dragged out in handcuffs. But that would be too easy. That would be too quick. They had spent 18 years making me feel worthless. They had called me a mistake. They had laughed at my dreams. Now they were in my web. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to my head of security. Do not flag the breach at the front gate. I have guests. But activate the internal surveillance in the guest wing. I want everything recorded. Then I sent a second text to my legal team. Pull the file on Marcus Wilson, Medicor embezzlement case. I want to know exactly how much he took and where he hid it. Prepare the paperwork. I walked back out to the dining room. They had finished eating and were now moving toward the stairs, leaving the dirty dishes on the table for me to clear. Becky called out from the bottom of the staircase. Bring our bags up, and bring a glass of warm milk for me. The baby needs calcium. I watched them ascend the stairs, their laughter echoing in the high ceilings of my foyer. You think you found a hiding place, I whispered to the empty room. But you just walked into a trap. As I cleared the table, I heard Marcus whisper something to Becky on the landing above. The girl is an idiot, he said, his voice carrying in the acoustics of the house. She has no clue. We can stay here as long as we want. If the owners come back, we will just say we are her family. They won't kick us out. We own this place now. I looked down at the expensive china plate in my hand, wiping away a smear of sauce. You do not own anything, Marcus. You do not even own the shirt on your back. And by the time I am done with you, you will wish you had stayed out in the rain. I turned off the lights downstairs, plunging the ground floor into darkness. Upstairs, the guest wing lit up as they settled into my sheets, used my water, and slept under my roof. They thought I was the family mistake. They were about to learn that I was the one who corrected errors, and I was going to use a lot of red ink. The banging on my door started at 6 in the morning. It was not a polite knock. It was a rhythmic, demanding pound that shook the frame. Nia, get up. My mother's voice was muffled by the heavy wood, but the sharpness cut through. My grandbaby is hungry and Marcus has important business calls to make. We need coffee. I lay in my bed for a moment, staring at the silk canopy above me. In any other reality, I would have called security. I would have pressed the panic button on my nightstand and watched as armed guards escorted these intruders off my property. But this was the reality I had chosen, the trap I was setting. I rolled out of bed, leaving the warmth of my duvet, and pulled on the same nondescript gray leggings and oversized t-shirt I had worn the night before. I looked in the mirror. No makeup, hair tied back in a messy bun. I looked tired. I looked like the servant they believed I was. When I walked into the kitchen, they were already there. They had found the breakfast nook, a sun-drenched corner with a view of the infinity pool and the manicured gardens beyond. They sat at my custom quartz island like they were holding court. About time, Becky said without looking up from her phone. She was wearing a silk robe. My silk robe, the one I had bought in Paris last year. She had rolled the sleeves up carelessly, and I saw a grease stain near the cuff. I felt a twitch in my eye but forced it still. Where is the coffee? Clarence demanded. He was sitting at the head of the island, drumming his fingers on the countertop. I have a headache. The beds in that guest wing are too soft. Tell the owners they need firmer mattresses if they want respectable guests. I moved to the coffee station. It was a $5,000 Italian espresso machine, capable of making barista-quality drinks with a single touch. But I did not use the touchscreen. I opened the cabinet and pulled out a jar of instant coffee I kept for emergencies or for contractors. I spooned the brown dust into a carafe and poured hot water over it. While the coffee dissolved, I started on the food. I pulled eggs, bacon, and artisanal bread from the refrigerator. This orange juice, Becky said, holding up a glass bottle I had left out. Is this from concentrate? It looks thick. I only drink fresh squeezed. The baby does not like preservatives. It was cold-pressed juice from a local organic market. It cost $12 a bottle. It is what was in the fridge, I said, cracking eggs into a bowl. Well, when you go shopping today, get the good stuff, Becky snapped. And get some turkey bacon. This pork stuff is going to make me fat. Marcus likes his women slim. She reached over and squeezed Marcus's bicep. My brother grinned, looking tired and puffy around the eyes. Yeah, Nia, get the good stuff. I gave you the card last night. Do not be cheap. I almost laughed. They were using my money to tell me not to be cheap with my own groceries. I served the food in silence. Scrambled eggs, crispy bacon toast. It was a breakfast fit for a king cooked by a CEO. Clarence took a sip of the instant coffee and grimaced, slamming the mug down. God almighty, Naya. What is this mud? It is coffee, Dad. I said the word feeling foreign on my tongue. It is swill, he corrected. 12 years. You have been gone 12 years, supposedly working in service, and you cannot even brew a decent cup of coffee. I guess we were right. You really do not have a knack for anything, do you? He looked at Bernice, seeking validation. I told you, Bernice said, picking at her eggs. She never had the domestic touch. Diane could cook a 3-course meal by the time she was 12. Nia could barely boil water without burning the pot. There it was, the comparison. Even when I was serving them, I was being measured against a ghost of perfection. It is embarrassing, really. Clarence continued, speaking about me as if I were not standing 3 feet away refilling his water glass. If the owners of this house knew how incompetent their help was, you would be out on the street in a heartbeat. You are lucky they are gone. You are lucky we are here to tolerate this mediocrity. I kept my face blank. I was good at this. I had practiced this face for 18 years before I escaped. You know, Becky said, chewing with her mouth open. Marcus told me about why you left. The family mistake. That is what they called you, right? The room went quiet, but it was not an awkward silence. It was a comfortable one. They were comfortable discussing my trauma. It was not just a name. Bernice sighed, looking out the window at my pool. It was the truth. Some children are blessings, some are lessons. Nia was a burden. She never fit in. Too quiet, too dark, too stubborn. And then she refused to go to college. Can you imagine? We gave her an opportunity, and she threw it in our faces to go work in a warehouse. It was a logistics internship, I said softly. A warehouse, Bernice corrected sharply. Packing boxes, like a common laborer. It broke my heart. I told the church group she had gone away to study abroad just to save face. I could not let them know my daughter was a dropout. And look where it got her, Marcus laughed, gesturing around the kitchen with his fork. 30 years old, unmarried, no kids, living in someone else's house cleaning up their messes, while I am about to close a deal that will set us up for life. He leaned back, looking satisfied. Medicor is just the beginning, he bragged to our father. Once this capital flows in, I am looking at real estate. Maybe I will buy a place like this. But with better taste. This decor is too cold. I gripped the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. He was talking about the money he stole from me, the money that was currently being tracked by the FBI. He was planning his future with the ashes of my company. You have always been the smart one, Marcus Clarence said, beaming. We knew it. That is why we invested everything in you. Nia. Well, Nia was just practice. Practice. I was practice. You know, Becky said, pushing her plate away, half-eaten. It is actually kind of sad, seeing her like this. I mean, look at her clothes. Look at her hands. She has nothing. She stood up and walked over to me. She smelled of my expensive body wash. She reached out and patted my cheek, a gesture so patronizing it took every ounce of my self-control not to slap her hand away. Do not worry, Nia. Once Marcus gets his money, maybe we can hire you. You are not great, but family is family, right? We could use a nanny, someone to change diapers. You are probably used to cleaning up poop. Laughter rippled through the kitchen. My mother, my father, my brother. Laughing at the idea of me scrubbing their child's filth. I turned away, walking toward the sink to hide the shaking in my hands. I needed a distraction. I needed a moment to breathe before I did something that would ruin the plan. My eyes fell on the small flat-screen television mounted under the cabinet. I usually kept it on the financial news in the mornings. It was currently muted, showing the local Atlanta broadcast. I froze. The screen was split. On the left was a news anchor looking serious. On the right was a photograph. It was a driver's license photo. A few years old but unmistakable. It was Marcus. The chyron at the bottom of the screen scrolled in bright red letters, wanted for questioning. Multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme. Flight risk. I watched as the screen changed to show the logo of Medicor and then the logo of Helix Solutions, my company. The news was reporting the internal audit I had authorized hours ago. They were talking about him. They were hunting him. And he was sitting 6 feet behind me, eating my toast and bragging about his genius. I looked at the reflection in the window. I could see them behind me. Marcus was checking his watch. Bernice was pouring more tea. They had no idea. Their world had already ended, and they were just waiting for the shockwave to hit. I reached out and placed my hand on the remote that was sitting on the counter. My thumb hovered over the volume button. One press. That was all it would take. I could turn the sound up and watch the color drain from his face. I could watch the panic set in. I could watch them turn on each other like rats in a sinking ship. But then I saw Becky looking at the refrigerator complaining that there was no sparkling water. I saw Clarence wiping his mouth with a linen napkin looking disdainful. It was too soon. If they knew now, they might run. They might find a way to slip through the cracks. I needed them here. I needed them comfortable. I needed them to feel so safe that they would dig their own graves a little deeper. I smiled. It was a small, sharp thing. I pressed the power button. The screen went black. The image of Marcus's face vanished, leaving only the dark reflection of the kitchen. "What are you smiling at?" Bernice asked sharply. "You look like you have a secret, and wipe that smirk off your face. It is unbecoming." "No secret, Mother," I said, turning to face them. "Just thinking about the day ahead. I have a feeling it is going to be very productive." I picked up the coffee pot. "More swill, Dad." I poured the coffee, watching the dark liquid fill his cup. "Drink up," I thought. "You are going to need the caffeine for when the handcuffs go on." I finished scrubbing the last of the egg yolk from the breakfast plates while my family dispersed into my living room to watch cable television on my 80-inch screen. They left the kitchen a disaster zone, a chaotic landscape of crumbs, spilled juice, and sticky fingerprints on my pristine countertops. It took me 40 minutes to restore order, 40 minutes of biting my tongue and reminding myself that patience is a weapon. As I wiped down the stainless steel refrigerator, I heard a noise from upstairs. It was not the heavy thud of Marcus's footsteps or the distinct click of my mother's heels. It was a scraping sound followed by a sharp crack of wood splintering. My head snapped up. That sound came from the east wing, the master suite, my sanctuary. I had locked the double doors leading to my private quarters before I let them in last night. I had used the heavy deadbolt, the one I installed specifically for peace of mind. No one should have been able to get in without a key. I dropped the dish rag in the sink and moved quickly to the stairs. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from fear, but from a violation that felt physical. I climbed the steps silently, the plush runner absorbing the sound of my movements. The hallway was empty, but the door to the master suite stood ajar. The wood around the lock was gouged and stripped, raw splinters sticking out like jagged teeth. A butter knife from my kitchen lay discarded on the floor. She had pried it open. She had broken into my room with a piece of flatware like a common burglar. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air in my bedroom usually smelled of lavender and expensive cedar, a scent that calmed me instantly. Now it smelled of something else. It smelled of intrusion. Becky was sitting at my vanity, my custom-built white lacquer vanity that held a small fortune in skincare and cosmetics. She was wearing my silk robe, the sash tied loosely around her waist, and she had her bare feet propped up on the velvet stool. She was digging her fingers into a jar of La Mer moisturizing cream, a jar that cost $500. She was not applying it to her face. She was slathering the thick white cream onto her cracked heels, rubbing it in with a grimace of satisfaction. I stood in the doorway, my breath catching in my throat. That jar was brand new. I had treated myself to it after closing the Medicor acquisition, the very company my brother had stolen from. And now his wife was using it as foot cream. She saw me in the mirror and didn't even jump. She just continued massaging her foot, making eye contact with my reflection. "Took you long enough," she said, her voice dripping with boredom. "I was about to come down and ring that little bell for service. Do you have a pumice stone? My feet are killing me from that drive. Marcus drives like a maniac." I walked further into the room, my eyes fixed on the jar in her hand. She had scooped out nearly half of it. $250 worth of product gone in seconds. "You are not supposed to be in here," I said, my voice low. "This room is locked for a reason." Becky laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Locks are for people who don't belong, Nia. We are guests. Family of the help, sure, but guests nonetheless. Besides, I needed to freshen up. The bathroom in that guest wing is tiny. This one has a jacuzzi. I'm going to use it later." She dipped her fingers back into the jar, scooping out another glob. "You know," she said, examining the cream on her fingers, "this stuff is expensive. I have seen it in magazines. It is supposed to be a miracle worker." She looked at me, then really looked at me, her eyes traveling up and down my plain clothes and my makeup-free face. A cruel little smile played on her lips. "It is a shame, really," she sighed. "I bet the lady of the house has shelves full of this stuff. And here you are, looking like you washed your face with dish soap." She rubbed the cream into her ankles. "But honestly, Nia, it would be wasted on you anyway. Products like this, they are designed for delicate skin. You know, skin that needs protection. Your skin, well, it is different. It is thick, rough. You people age differently, right? You do not need the high-end stuff. Vaseline works just fine for you." The racism was casual, wrapped in a fake observation, but it hit its mark. She was telling me I was too black, too poor, too beneath her to deserve luxury. She was sitting in my chair, using my hard-earned success to moisturize her feet, and telling me I wasn't worthy of it. The rage that flared in my chest was so hot, it almost blinded me. I wanted to grab her by that stolen silk robe and drag her out of my house. I wanted to scream that I owned the company that made the packaging for that cream. I wanted to show her my bank balance and watch her face crumble. But I couldn't. Not yet. If I exploded now, the game was over. Marcus would run. My parents would play the victim. I needed them to dig the hole deeper. I forced my hands to unclench. I forced my face into a mask of terrified servitude. "You need to put that back," I whispered, injecting a tremor of fear into my voice. "Please, Becky. The lady of the house, she is obsessive. She counts her inventory. She knows exactly how much is in every jar. If she comes back and sees that half of it is gone, she will fire me. She will deduct it from my wages. That jar costs more than I make in a week." Becky rolled her eyes and wiped the excess cream from her hands onto my velvet stool, leaving a greasy smear on the fabric. "Oh, relax," she scoffed. "You are so dramatic. Just add some water to it and stir it up. She will never know the difference. Rich people are stupid, Nia. They just buy this stuff for the label. It is probably just cold cream in a fancy jar anyway." She stood up, testing her softened feet on my carpet. She walked over to my jewelry armoire, her fingers trailing over the wood. Besides, she continued opening the top drawer. "If she fires you, so what? Marcus is going to be rich soon. We will take care of you. We will need someone to clean our big house, and since you are already trained, you can come work for us. We might even pay you minimum wage if you are nice to me." She pulled out a diamond tennis bracelet. It was a vintage piece left to me by the only grandmother who had ever loved me. Becky dangled it from her finger, watching it catch the light. "This is tacky," she decided, dropping it back into the drawer with a clatter. "It looks fake. Your boss has bad taste." She turned back to me, closing the robe tighter around herself. "Now get out. I want to take a bath. And bring me a glass of champagne. The good stuff from the cellar, not whatever swill you served at dinner. And do not disturb me for an hour." She shooed me away with her hand like I was a fly. I turned and walked out of the room. I did not look back at the broken door frame. I did not look back at the greasy stain on my velvet stool. I walked down the hall, my footsteps heavy and deliberate. She thought I was powerless. She thought I was nothing. She had violated my sanctuary, insulted my heritage, and damaged my property, all while thinking she was doing me a favor. I walked past the guest wing where I could hear Marcus snoring. I walked past the living room where my parents were arguing about which channel to watch. I went into the laundry room, a small soundproof space off the kitchen. I pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands were steady now. The rage had cooled into something solid and sharp like a blade. I dialed a number I had saved for emergencies. It rang once. "Yes, Miss Wilson." The voice on the other end was crisp and professional. It was Jasmine, my executive assistant, a woman who could organize a hostile takeover before her morning coffee. "Jasmine," I said, my voice flat. "I need you to access the smart home system for the estate, specifically the master suite." "Is there a problem with the security, ma'am?" "No," I said. "There is a pest. I need you to activate the hidden cameras in the master bedroom and the master bath. The ones we installed for insurance purposes." There was a brief pause. Jasmine knew I valued my privacy. "I never used those cameras." "Are you sure, Miss Wilson?" "I am sure," I said. "I want a 24-hour recording, high definition, audio and video, and Jasmine. Yes, I want everything backed up to a secure server, every second. If she touches a single earring, if she opens a single drawer, if she steals so much as a cotton ball, I want it recorded. I want evidence that will stand up in a court of law." "Understood," Jasmine said, her tone shifting from assistant to co-conspirator. "It is done. The feed is live. Do you want me to send it to your tablet?" "Yes," I said. "And Jasmine, call the legal department. Tell them to draft a complaint for grand larceny and destruction of property. Keep the defendant's name blank for now. I will fill it in later." I hung up the phone. I leaned against the washing machine and closed my eyes. I could imagine Becky upstairs right now, slipping into my oversized tub, pouring my expensive bath salts into the water, thinking she had won the lottery. She thought she was the queen of the castle. She did not know she was just a rat in a maze, and I had just turned on the lights. I walked back into the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator and took out a bottle of champagne. It was a bottle of Dom Perignon I had been saving for a special occasion. I popped the cork. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet kitchen. I poured a glass. I watched the bubbles rise to the top. "Here is to you." "Becky," I whispered, "enjoy the bath. It is going to be the most expensive soak of your life." I put the glass on a silver tray and started up the stairs. I was the maid today, but tomorrow I would be the executioner, and I always finished the job. Sunday morning arrived not with peace, but with the aggressive sound of gospel music blasting from the guest wing. My mother was awake, and she was preparing for her performance. In Bernice Wilson's world, Sunday service was not about worship. It was a runway show where the currency was judgment, and the prize was being the most envied woman in the pew. I was in the kitchen drinking black coffee and watching the security feed on my tablet when she swept in. She was wearing a cream-colored suit she had bought yesterday with my stolen money, topped with an elaborate hat that looked like a satellite dish made of feathers. She looked expensive. She looked ridiculous. "We are leaving in 20 minutes, she announced, adjusting a brooch that I recognized from a boutique in Buckhead. "And you are driving us." I looked up from my tablet. "I have work to do here, Mother. The house needs cleaning." "The house can wait," she snapped. "We need to make an appearance. We need people to see that, despite the trials of the enemy, the Wilson family is thriving. Marcus looks like a king in his new suit. And Becky, well, she cleaned up nicely. We need a driver, Nia. We cannot pull up to Greater Ebenezer in that rental car. It screams poverty. We will take the big black SUV in the garage. The keys are usually in the drawer by the door." She wanted to pull up in my Range Rover Autobiography. She wanted to step out of a $200,000 vehicle driven by her daughter, whom she would introduce as the help to prove to her old prayer circle that she had not lost her touch. "Fine," I said, setting my mug down. "I will drive you." "Good," she said, looking me up and down with a sneer. "And try to do something with yourself. You look like you just rolled out of a gutter. Wear something nondescript. I do not want you embarrassing us. You can wait in the car during the service or sit in the back overflow room. Just do not sit with us." I put on a simple black dress, the kind a grieving widow or a servant might wear. I pulled my hair back tight. I grabbed the keys to my own car and walked out to the driveway. The drive to the church was a masterclass in delusion. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, fiddling with the climate control and complaining that the seat warmer was too hot. Becky and my parents were in the back criticizing the Atlanta traffic and speculating on who would be at the service. When we pulled up to the church, it was a scene. Greater Ebenezer was the kind of megachurch where the parking lot looked like a luxury car dealership. Valets were running back and forth. Women in Sunday best were navigating the asphalt in 6-inch heels. I pulled the Range Rover up to the curb. Marcus hopped out first, buttoning his stolen jacket, looking around to see who was watching. He offered a hand to Becky, who slid out trying to look like royalty, but stumbling slightly in her new, ill-fitting shoes. Bernice emerged last, pausing for effect. She scanned the crowd, her eyes locking onto a group of older women standing near the entrance. Her targets. "Nia, park the car and wait," she hissed at me through the window. "Or if you must come in, find a dark corner." I parked the car in the VIP lot. The attendant knew me. He started to wave, but I put a finger to my lips and shook my head. He looked confused but lowered his hand. I walked toward the church, staying a few paces behind my family. They had already engaged the group of women. I recognized Mrs. Gable and Mrs. Johnson, the church gossips who had known my mother for 30 years. Bernice, Mrs. Gable shrieked, her jewelry clanking as she moved. "We heard you moved to Atlanta. And look at you, you look prosperous." "God has been good," Bernice said, assuming a humble pose that was anything but. "We are just blessed to be here with our son. You remember Marcus?" She gestured to Marcus, who flashed his winning, fraudulent smile. "He is the chief financial officer for a major medical firm now." Bernice lied smoothly. "Medicor. You may have heard of it. He is handling multi-million-dollar portfolios. We are just so proud." The women cooed and fussed over Marcus, who soaked it up like a sponge. "And this is his lovely wife," Becky, Bernice continued. "She is expecting our first grandbaby." She completely ignored the fact that Diane had children. In this moment, Marcus was the only child who mattered because he was the one standing in a suit she had bought with stolen funds. "And who is this?" Mrs. Johnson asked, peering over Bernice's shoulder at me. Bernice stiffened. She stepped to the side, blocking me partially from view. "Oh, that is Nia," she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming heavy with performative sadness. "You remember Nia? The one who struggled." The women's faces changed instantly. Pity, judgment. "Poor thing." Mrs. Gable clucked. "Is she doing any better?" "We are doing what we can." Bernice sighed, a martyr in a stolen hat. "She is working as a domestic now, for the owners of the estate where we are staying. We try to keep her close, to keep her out of trouble. It is hard seeing your child reduced to service. But we pray for her." I stood there stone-faced. She had reduced my empire to a cautionary tale. She had turned my success into shame. Just then the heavy oak doors of the sanctuary opened, and Pastor Jamal stepped out. He was a tall man with a booming voice and a sharp mind. He was also a personal friend of mine. I had donated the funds for the new youth center wing last year. We had lunch once a month to discuss community initiatives. He saw the crowd. He saw my mother. And then he saw me. His face lit up. He started to step forward, his hand extended. "Ms. Wilson, it is so good to see." My mother cut him off physically, stepping in front of him. "Pastor, it is an honor. I am Bernice Wilson. This is my son Marcus. We are visiting from out of town." Pastor Jamal looked confused. He looked over Bernice's feathered hat at me. I caught his eye. I gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of my head. I put a finger to my lips. He paused. He was a smart man. He saw the tension. He saw my plain dress and my mother's aggressive posturing. He realized something was playing out that he did not understand, but he respected me enough to follow my lead. "Welcome, Sister Wilson," he said, his voice cooling considerably. "And Marcus, welcome to God's house." He looked at me one last time, a question in his eyes. I just nodded. "We were just telling the ladies about Marcus's success." Bernice rattled on, oblivious to the shift in atmosphere. "He is a CFO. We are very blessed." "That is wonderful," Pastor Jamal said dryly. "We are always happy to have prosperous guests." He turned and went back inside, leaving my mother beaming. She thought she had impressed him. She didn't know she had just snubbed the woman who paid for the roof over his head. We moved into the sanctuary. My family marched to the front rows, pushing past ushers to claim seats of honor. I slipped into the back, standing near the audio booth. The service began, but I wasn't listening. I was watching my family preen. I was watching Marcus check his phone, probably looking for updates on his warrant. Suddenly, a commotion at the back of the church drew my attention. A man had entered. He was dressed in a suit that cost more than my car. He moved with the arrogance of a man who owned everything he looked at. It was Desmond Vance. Desmond was my biggest competitor in the logistics game. He was ruthless, sharp, and hated my guts because I had beaten him to the Medicor acquisition. He knew my face, he knew my name, and he knew exactly how much I was worth. He scanned the room looking for someone, probably a business associate. His eyes swept over the congregation and landed on me. He stopped. He blinked. Then a slow, cruel smile spread across his face. He walked over to me, ignoring the ushers. "Well, well," he whispered, his voice carrying in the quiet lull between songs. "If it isn't the Queen of Helix. What are you doing hiding in the back? Nia, did you lose a bet?" I stiffened. "Hello, Desmond." He looked at my plain dress. He looked at my lack of jewelry. "Playing undercover boss," he sneered. "Or did the market finally catch up to you? You look quaint." Before I could answer, the service ended. The congregation began to file out. My family came down the aisle, walking like they were in a parade. Desmond saw them. He saw Marcus in the ill-fitting suit. He saw Bernice in the feathered hat. He saw Becky looking bored. "Who are these clowns?" Desmond asked loudly. My mother stopped. She heard him. She turned, bristling with indignation. "Excuse me," she said. "I am Bernice Wilson. And this is my son Marcus. He is a CFO." Desmond threw his head back and laughed, a loud barking laugh that drew stares. "A CFO. That guy, he looks like he sells used cars in a strip mall. And you? Madam, that hat is a crime against fashion." My mother gasped. My father stepped forward, his chest puffed out. "Now see here," he blustered. "You cannot speak to my wife that way. We are respected people. We are staying at the estate on Highland Drive." Desmond looked at me. His eyes were dancing with malice. "Is that right?" he asked me. "They are staying at the Highland estate." I said nothing. I just looked at him. He looked back at my family. He looked at their cheap shoes disguised by expensive clothes. He looked at their desperate need to be seen. "You people are hilarious," Desmond said, wiping a tear from his eye. "You look like the help trying to play dress-up in the master's closet." "CFO? Please. The only thing that guy manages is a fantasy football team." He turned to me. "I do not know why you are standing here with this riffraff Nia, but it is a bad look, even for you." He walked away, chuckling to himself. My mother was trembling with rage. Her face was a mask of humiliation. People were staring. They were whispering. The illusion she had tried so hard to build had been shattered by one rude man in a $3,000 suit. "Who was that?" she hissed at me. "Do you know him? Why didn't you defend us? You just stood there and let him insult your brother." I looked at her. I looked at Marcus, who was staring at his shoes. I looked at my father, who was deflating like a punctured balloon. "I am just the help, Mother," I said softly. "It is not my place to speak to gentlemen like that." I turned and walked toward the car. They followed me, silent and shamed. They didn't know that the man who insulted them was my rival. They didn't know that his insult was the only truth they had heard all day. They climbed into the car, the air thick with their embarrassment. "Drive," Bernice snapped. "Just drive." I put the car in gear. The Sunday service showdown was over. They had lost. And they didn't even know who had really beaten them. The humiliation at the church hung over the house like a toxic fog for the rest of the afternoon. My mother retreated to the guest room with a migraine, refusing to speak to anyone. Clarence sat in the living room, staring blankly at a golf tournament on television, looking like a man whose world was slowly leaking air. But Marcus dealt with his shame differently. He needed to feel powerful again, and in his mind, power was synonymous with taking things that did not belong to him. I was in the pantry organizing spices when I heard the crash. It came from the basement level, from the climate-controlled wine cellar that I kept locked with a biometric keypad. Or at least I thought I did. I had underestimated the brute force of a desperate man. I wiped my hands on my apron and descended the stairs. The air grew cooler as I went down, the smell of cedar and aging grapes greeting me. The heavy glass door to the cellar was shattered near the handle. The electronic lock dangled by its wires, a victim of what looked like a crowbar from the garage. Inside, Marcus was sitting on a crate of vintage Bordeaux. He had already opened a bottle. Not just any bottle. It was a 1982 Chateau Petrus, $5,000 of liquid history. He was drinking it straight from the bottle, purple rivulets running down his chin and staining his stolen white shirt. He looked up as I entered, his eyes glassy and red-rimmed. "Hey, little sister," he slurred, waving the bottle at me. "Join the party. The owners have the good stuff hidden down here." "Why didn't you tell me?" I stared at the bottle in his hand. That wine was meant for my wedding day if I ever had one. It was an investment. Now it was mouthwash for a criminal. "You should not be down here, Marcus," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "This room is temperature controlled for a reason, and that bottle is worth more than your car." He laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "My car. Which one? The one the bank took, or the one I am going to buy when my ship comes in? You have no imagination, Nia. That is your problem. You see a price tag. I see a celebration." He stood up, swaying slightly, and grabbed a crystal decanter from the shelf. He shoved it toward me. "Pour this properly," he commanded. "I am tired of drinking like a hobo. Let it breathe." That is what rich people do, right? They let it breathe. I took the bottle and the decanter. I could have smashed the glass over his head. It would have been justified. But I needed him talking. I needed him to feel safe enough to boast. I poured the dark red wine into the crystal vessel. The aroma filled the small room, rich and complex. Marcus watched me with a sneer. "See?" he said. "You are good at serving. It is natural for you. Mom always said you were born to be in the background." He grabbed a glass from the rack and held it out. I poured. He took a long swig, swirling it around his mouth before swallowing loudly. "That guy at the church," he said, his mood darkening instantly. "That Desmond guy. He thinks he is better than me. He thinks because he wears a fancy suit he can talk down to me." "He is a powerful man, Marcus," I said, softly refilling his glass. "He knows the industry." "He doesn't know anything," Marcus spat. "He is just like the rest of them. They think I am stupid. They think I am just some jock who got lucky. But I outsmarted them all. Even the auditors at Medicor." My hand froze for a fraction of a second before I continued pouring. This was it. "Auditors can be tricky," I said, playing the part of the naive sister. "How did you get past them?" Marcus chuckled, leaning back against the wine racks. He was loosening up. The alcohol and the need to prove his intelligence were a dangerous combination. "It was easy," he bragged. "Medicor processes thousands of vendor invoices a month. Supply chain, logistics, maintenance. I just created a few vendors that did not exist. Helix Logistics. Alpha Supply. Sounds real, right? I routed the payments to accounts I control in the Caymans. Small amounts at first. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. Just under the radar. He took another drink, his eyes gleaming with pride. Then I got bold. I realized their oversight software had a lag in the reconciliation phase, so I started moving bigger chunks. 50,000. 100. I moved the decimal points on the inventory sheets to cover the loss. They thought they were paying for premium surgical steel. They were paying for air. And the money went straight into my pocket. I slowly moved my left hand under the counter, tapping the screen of my smartwatch. The voice memo app was already open. I just needed to hit record. That sounds risky, I said, pushing him further. Won't they track the accounts? Let them try, Marcus scoffed. I layered the shell companies 3 deep. By the time they figure out who owns Alpha Supply, I will be on a beach in Brazil with a new name. That is why we are here, Nia. I just need a few weeks for the final transfer to clear. Then, I am gone. And Mom and Dad can come with me. We will live like kings. He looked at me, his expression turning pitiable. Maybe we will send you a postcard. Or maybe not. You seem happy here. Scrubbing floors. He had just confessed to wire fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. He had detailed his method and his escape plan. And he had done it all while drinking my $5,000 wine. I checked my watch. The recording was running. The red waveform was bouncing with every word he spoke. You really think you are smarter than everyone else, don't you? I asked, allowing a hint of my true voice to slip through. You think Medicor won't notice millions of dollars missing? You think the parent company Helix Solutions doesn't have algorithms specifically designed to catch people like you? Marcus frowned. He set the glass down hard on the counter. The stem snapped, but he didn't notice. What do you know about algorithms? He sneered. You are a maid, Nia. You barely finished high school. Do not try to talk business with me. It is insulting. I finished high school, Marcus, and I learned a few things since then, like the fact that Helix Solutions updated their security protocols last month. Real-time tracking. They probably flagged your accounts before you even left the state. He stepped closer to me, his breath hot and sour with wine. His face was flushed with anger. The arrogance was cracking, revealing the fear underneath. Shut up, he shouted. You are jealous. That is all this is. You are jealous because I am the golden boy and you are nothing. You are trying to scare me because you want me to fail. But I won't fail. I am going to be rich. I am going to be powerful. And you are going to be serving my leftovers to your cats. He grabbed the half-empty bottle of Petrus by the neck. For a second I thought he was going to hit me with it. Instead, he hurled his broken glass at me. It struck my shoulder hard. The crystal shattered on impact, spraying red wine all over my white shirt. It looked like a gunshot wound, a blooming stain of crimson spreading across my chest. I did not flinch. I did not scream. I just stood there staring at him. Look at you, he laughed, pointing at the stain. Now you look like what you are. Dirty, messy, a mistake. Clean it up, Nia, and get me another glass. This one is broken. I looked down at the wine soaking into my shirt. It was ruined, but the recording was saved. I reached into my pocket and tapped my watch to stop the recording. Then I looked up at him. My eyes were dry. My pulse was steady. I am not getting you another glass, Marcus, I said. He blinked, surprised by the tone. What did you say to me? I said no, I repeated. And you are right about one thing. You are going to be rich in experience. He stepped forward, his fist clenched. You ungrateful little brat. I should teach you some respect. You won't touch me, I said, standing my ground. Because if you do, you will never get to spend that money. You will be too busy answering questions. Questions from who? The police. You think I am scared of the police? No, I said. I think you are scared of being irrelevant. But do not worry, brother. You do not have to worry about that anymore. I took a napkin and dabbed at the wine on my shirt. It was pointless, but the gesture was calm, dismissive. What are you talking about? He demanded, his voice rising to a shriek. Why are you looking at me like that? Stop looking at me like that. You said you wanted to be big, Marcus. You said you wanted everyone to know your name. I turned and walked toward the stairs, the broken glass crunching under my shoes. Well, you got your wish, I said over my shoulder. You are going to be famous. The 6 o'clock news is going to love you. I left him standing in the wreckage of the cellar, holding a bottle he could not finish, screaming at a sister he did not know. He thought he was the predator. He didn't know he was already in the cage. Part 7. The Unexpected Visitor. The doorbell rang at 10 in the morning. I was in the living room vacuuming the rug while my mother watched a talk show with the volume turned up high enough to rattle the windows. Becky was painting her nails on the coffee table, the smell of acetone warring with the lingering scent of stale wine from the night before. "Nia, get that," Bernice barked without looking away from the screen. "And if it is the delivery man, tell him to go to the side entrance. I do not want tracked mud in here." I turned off the vacuum and walked to the door. I knew who it was. I had texted Jasmine an hour ago to bring the final dossier. I opened the door to find Jasmine standing there. She looked like she had just stepped off a runway. She was wearing a structured blazer that I knew cost $3,000, tailored trousers, and red-bottomed heels that clicked sharply against the porch stone. She held a thick manila envelope in one manicured hand and a designer handbag in the other. "Delivery for the staff," Jasmine said, her voice dripping with amusement as she looked me up and down in my servant's attire. "You look tired, Nia. Rough night?" "You have no idea," I muttered, stepping aside to let her in. "Come in, but be careful. The animals are restless." Jasmine stepped into the foyer, the heels clicking loudly on the marble. The sound drew the attention of the vultures in the living room. Becky looked up from her nails, blowing on them to dry the polish. Her eyes widened when she saw Jasmine scanning her from head to toe with a look of instant, jealous appraisal. "Who is this?" Becky asked, her voice shrill. "Another maid. Did the agency send reinforcements because you cannot handle the cleaning by yourself, Nia?" I saw Jasmine's jaw tighten. She was the chief operations officer of a Fortune 500 company. She had fired people for looking at her the wrong way. Being called a maid by a woman wearing stolen shoes was not in her job description. "This is Jasmine," I said quickly, stepping between them. "She works with me. She just dropped off some paperwork for the house." Becky stood up, walking over to us with a critical sneer. She circled Jasmine like a shark, looking at the handbag, then at the shoes. "Nice bag," Becky said, reaching out to touch the leather strap of Jasmine's authentic Hermes. "Chinatown special. It is a good knockoff. The stitching is almost straight. You girls really spend your whole paycheck trying to look like us, don't you?" Jasmine pulled the bag away, her eyes flashing dangerous fire. "Excuse me?" "Oh, do not get offended." Becky laughed, a high, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "It is cute, really. It is ambitious. You want to look like you belong in a house like this, instead of just cleaning it." "I get it. Fake it until you make it right." Bernice chimed in from the couch, not even bothering to turn around. "Becky is right. You girls should save your money instead of buying fake designer trash. It is tacky. Naya, tell your friend not to track dirt in here, and tell her to use the service entrance next time. We are trying to relax." I saw Jasmine's hand curl into a fist around the envelope. She took a step toward Becky, her posture shifting from professional to predatory. "Listen here, you little—" Jasmine began, her voice low and threatening. "Jasmine," I cut in sharply, grabbing her arm. "Please, she does not know what she is saying. She is tired from the travel." Becky smirked, mistaking Jasmine's restraint for submission. "That is right," Becky said. "I am exhausted. Being pregnant is hard work. Not that you would know. You look like the career type. Single, lonely, spending all your money on fake purses to fill the void." She looked around the room and spotted a bag of trash I had tied up but hadn't taken out yet because I was vacuuming. "Since you are here," Becky said, pointing a manicured finger at the garbage bag, "and you are clearly heading out, take that trash with you. It is stinking up the room. Be useful since you are already dressed for the street." The silence that followed was deafening. Jasmine looked at the trash bag. Then she looked at Becky. Then she looked at me. I could see the calculation in her eyes. She wanted to destroy this woman. She wanted to buy the building Becky lived in and evict her. She wanted to ruin her life with a single phone call. Take the trash, Becky repeated, enunciating every word like she was speaking to a child. I squeezed Jasmine's arm hard, a silent plea. Not yet. Don't blow my cover. The payoff is coming. Jasmine took a deep breath. She exhaled slowly through her nose. She forced a smile that was terrifying in its artificiality. Of course, Jasmine said, her voice ice cold. I would be happy to take out the trash. I specialize in waste management. She did not pick up the bag. She just stared at Becky, until Becky looked away, suddenly uncomfortable, under the intensity of the gaze. Naya, Jasmine said, turning her back on my sister-in-law. I need you to sign for these papers. It is urgent. She marched toward the kitchen, away from the living room. I followed her, grabbing the trash bag on my way just to keep the peace. Once we were behind the swinging door of the kitchen, Jasmine exploded. You have got to be kidding me, she hissed, slamming the envelope onto the counter. Who is that? Who does she think she is? I have shoes worth more than her entire existence. A knockoff. She called my Birkin a knockoff. Nia, let me end her. Let me call the police right now. I will have her arrested for breathing my air. Calm down, I whispered, pouring her a glass of water. She is ignorant. She is a gnat. You cannot swat a gnat with a sledgehammer. You have to wait until it lands. Jasmine drank the water in one gulp, her hands still shaking with rage. You have the patience of a saint, she said, or a sociopath. I am not sure which one yet. How do you live with them? They are monsters. They are my family, I said, the word tasting bitter. Or they were. Now they are just targets. Well, the target is painted, Jasmine said, tapping the envelope. This is everything you asked for. The forensic accounting on Medicor, the wire transfers Marcus made. We found the shell companies. He was not even smart about it, Nia. He used his own initials for the LLCs, MW Global, Marcus Wilson Global. He transferred $200,000 directly from the company accounts to an offshore bank that cooperates with the IRS. I opened the envelope and scanned the documents. It was all there. The trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to my brother's greed. And there is more, Jasmine said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. We found the document he tried to delete, the one where he forged the CFO's signature to authorize the transfers. That is forgery, wire fraud, and embezzlement. We have him on federal charges, Nia. He is looking at 20 years minimum. I looked at the papers. It was a death sentence for his life as a free man. Did he sign the new contract? I asked. He did, Jasmine said, a wicked grin spreading across her face. He thought he was signing a non-disclosure agreement to protect his investments from the audit. He didn't read the fine print. He admitted to the transfers in writing, claiming they were authorized bonuses. He basically signed a confession, thinking it was a shield. She leaned in close, her eyes gleaming. The legal team is ready. The FBI has been notified of the irregularities, but we haven't given them the name yet. We are holding the trigger. Just say the word Naya. Do you want me to call them now? We can have the feds storm this house in 20 minutes. We can drag him out in handcuffs right in front of your mother. I looked through the kitchen window at the backyard. Marcus was out there by the pool smoking a cigar he had stolen from my humidor, talking loudly on his phone. He looked relaxed. He looked like he had gotten away with it. If I arrested him now, it would be over. He would go to jail. My parents would cry. Becky would play the victim. It would be a mess, but it would be justice. But it wouldn't be enough. They still thought they were better than me. They still thought I was the failure. I needed them to see me. I needed them to know exactly who was taking them down. I needed the stage. No, I said, closing the folder. Not yet. It is too quiet. I want an audience. The gala, Jasmine realized, nodding slowly. You want to do it at the gala. The Business Innovators Gala, I said. Tomorrow night. Everyone will be there. The board, the investors, the press, and my family. You are going to take them. They are dying to go, I said. Marcus thinks he can find the owner of this house there and blackmail him with the stolen documents. He wants to go to the ball, so I am going to be his fairy godmother. Jasmine laughed a dark, delighted sound. You are terrifying, she said. Remind me never to cross you. You are loyal, I said. You have nothing to worry about. We heard the kitchen door swing open. Becky stood there looking suspicious. What are you two whispering about? She demanded. And why is the trash still here? I told you to take it out. Jasmine straightened her blazer. She picked up her bag and walked toward the back door. She stopped in front of Becky and looked her dead in the eye. Enjoy your stay, Jasmine said. It is going to be very memorable. She walked out, her heels clicking on the patio. Becky looked at me. Your friends are weird and rude. You need better friends, Nia. I will work on that, I said, picking up the trash bag. Right after I take out the garbage. I walked past her, the folder tucked safely under my arm beneath the trash bag. I had the weapon. Now I just needed to set the scene. The gala was going to be a night to remember. I told my mother I had to run errands for the estate manager. It was a flimsy excuse, but Bernice was too busy admiring herself in the hallway mirror, wearing a silk scarf she had pilfered from my coat rack, to ask for details. I drove the rental sedan out of the gate, watching the rearview mirror until the house disappeared behind the trees. I did not go far. I parked around the corner in a cul-de-sac that offered a view of the service entrance and pulled out my tablet. The security feed was crisp and clear. I had cameras in every hallway, every common room, and crucially inside my private office on the second floor. I had left the house specifically to give them space. Rats do not come out when the cat is watching. They wait for the silence. It took less than 15 minutes. I watched on the screen as Marcus emerged from the guest wing. He was wearing the suit from yesterday, the jacket discarded, his shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked agitated. He paced the upstairs landing, checking his phone repeatedly. I knew what he was looking at. His bank accounts were frozen. His lawyer was likely ghosting him. He was cornered, and a cornered man looks for a door. He stopped in front of my office. The heavy oak door was locked just as I had left it. But locks in this house were designed to keep honest people out, or to delay the dishonest ones long enough for the cameras to catch them. Marcus called out to our father. Clarence appeared a moment later, looking nervous, glancing over the banister to ensure the downstairs was empty. They spoke in hushed tones that the hallway microphone picked up clearly. She is gone, Marcus said, gesturing at the door. This is the only room she never lets us in. The master suite was just clothes and jewelry. But this is where the business happens. What do you think is in there? Clarence asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. Money, Marcus said. Or something worth money. Safe codes, ledger books. The owner of this place is loaded, Dad. You saw the cars, you saw the wine. Men like that keep cash on hand, or they keep secrets. Either way, I need it. Marcus pulled a screwdriver from his back pocket. I recognized it from my kitchen utility drawer. He jammed it into the gap between the door and the frame. He was not a thief by trade, he was a thief by desperation, and his technique was brutal. He leaned his weight against the tool, grunting with effort. The wood groaned. Stop! Clarence hissed. You are going to break it. Nia will know. Let her know, Marcus spat. What is she going to do? Tell on us. She is terrified of losing her job. She will cover for us. She always does. With a loud crack, the wood splintered. The latch gave way. The door swung open. I watched them step into my sanctuary. My office was a space of dark wood, leather, and silence. It was where I had built Helix Solutions from a concept into a titan. The walls were lined with awards, but I had taken them down before they arrived, leaving only generic art. My desk was a massive slab of mahogany. And sitting right in the center of that desk, bathed in a pool of light from the window, was a single red folder. It was the bait. Marcus went straight for it. He didn't even look at the expensive computer or the safe in the corner. He saw the paper. He saw the red stamp that said, "Confidential." He opened it. I zoomed in on the camera feed. I could see his eyes scanning the documents. These were the merger files for Project Horizon, a land acquisition deal involving the rezoning of industrial parks in Savannah. It was a deal worth $40 million. It contained blueprints, financial projections, and a list of competitors who were trying to bid on the same land. "This is it," Marcus whispered. His hands were shaking. "Dad, look at this!" Clarence peered over his shoulder. "What is it, blueprints?" "It is insider information," Marcus said, his voice rising in excitement. "Look, Helix Solutions is buying up the entire waterfront. They are trying to keep it quiet so the prices do not spike. If this gets out, if a competitor finds out—" He looked up, his eyes manic. "We can sell this. We can sell this to the rival bidders, or we can go to this Helix company and tell them we will leak it unless they pay us a consulting fee." He had no idea that Helix was my company. He thought he had stumbled upon the homeowner's secret business dealings. He thought he had found leverage against a stranger. "This is dangerous, son," Clarence said, though he did not move to take the folder away. "This is corporate espionage." "It is survival," Marcus snapped. "I need 50 grand for the lawyer, Dad, or I go to jail." "Do you want me to go to jail?" This file is my get-out-of-jail-free card." He pulled out his phone and started snapping pictures of the documents. Page after page. He was sloppy, he was rushing, but he was getting enough. I started the car. It was time for the performance of a lifetime. I drove back to the house, tires screeching slightly as I pulled into the driveway. I wanted them to hear me. I slammed the car door. I ran up the front steps, fumbling with my keys, making as much noise as possible. I burst through the front door. "Mom! Dad!" I shouted, injecting a note of panic into my voice. I forgot my phone. I ran up the stairs. I could hear them scrambling in the office. They were trying to put things back, trying to look innocent. I reached the landing and ran straight to the office door. I stopped in the doorway, chest heaving, eyes wide. Marcus was trying to shove the folder back onto the desk, but it was crooked. The papers were disheveled. The splintered doorframe was obvious. "What are you doing?" I screamed. I rushed into the room, grabbing the folder before Marcus could fully release it. I clutched it to my chest like it was a child. "You broke in. You broke into the office." "Nia, relax," Marcus said, holding up his hands. "We were just looking for a pen. The door was stuck." "A pen," I yelled. "You used a crowbar. Do you know what this is? Do you have any idea what you just touched?" I looked at the folder, then back at them, letting the terror wash over my face. "This is his, the owner. He is not a good man, Marcus. He is dangerous. He told me if anyone ever saw these papers, he would know. He has cameras. He has people." I looked around the room wildly, as if searching for imaginary hitmen. "If he finds out you saw this, if he thinks you compromised his deal, he will kill me. He will literally kill me. And then he will come for you." My performance was working. Clarence looked pale. He backed away toward the door. "We didn't read it, Nia," he stammered. We saw the folder. We didn't know it was important." "You are lying," I cried. "I saw you with your phone, Marcus." "Did you take pictures?" "Tell me you didn't take pictures." Marcus's expression changed. He saw my fear, and just like that, he wasn't scared anymore. He was predatory. He saw weakness, and he lunged for it. "So what if I did?" he said, his voice dropping to a sneer. He walked around the desk and sat in my chair. He swiveled it back and forth, looking at me with a newfound arrogance. "It seems like this owner of yours has some secrets, Nia. Secrets he wants to keep hidden. If he is as dangerous as you say, then he is probably willing to pay to keep this quiet." "You can't," I whispered. "You can't blackmail him. He will destroy you. He is a businessman, Marcus scoffed. Businessmen make deals. And I have the leverage now. I have the photos. I have the proof. He stood up and walked over to me. He reached out and tapped the folder in my arms. You are going to set up a meeting, he said. What? You heard me. You are going to tell your boss that you found your brother in the office. You are going to tell him that I saw the papers. And you are going to tell him that I am willing to forget everything I saw for a price. He smiled a cold, shark-like grin. $50,000. Cash. That is the price of my silence. And if he doesn't pay, well, I guess I will just have to find out who his competitors are. He thought he had won. He thought he was holding a royal flush. He didn't know he was holding a grenade and I had just pulled the pin. I lowered my head, letting my shoulders slump in defeat. I can't tell him, I sobbed. He will fire me. He won't fire you, Marcus said. You are his bridge to me. You are going to help me, Nia. For once in your useless life, you are going to be valuable to this family. He patted my cheek hard. There is a party tomorrow night, he said. As I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Marcus cornered me. The smell of searing salmon filled the room, usually a comforting scent, but tonight it felt suffocating. Marcus leaned against the island, waving a stack of papers in my face, the stolen documents from my office. You know what this is, Nia? He said, his voice low and menacing. This is my ticket out of this mess. And it is your ticket to jail if you do not cooperate. I turned the burner down and wiped my hands on a towel. I kept my movements slow, deliberate. You are making a mistake, Marcus. Those papers are not what you think they are. Oh, I think I know exactly what they are, he sneered. Insider trading, corporate espionage, illegal land grabs. Your boss is Dirty Nia, and you are his little helper. You let us into the house. You let us find this. That makes you an accomplice. He slammed the papers onto the counter right next to the cutting board. I need $50,000, cash, by tomorrow morning. If I do not get it, I am sending copies of this to every news outlet in Atlanta. And I am telling them my sister the maid gave them to me because she grew a conscience. I stared at him. The audacity was almost impressive. He was threatening to frame me for leaking documents he had stolen to pay off a debt he had incurred by stealing from my company. It was a snake eating its own tail. I do not have $50,000, Marcus, I said. I am a housekeeper. You know what I make. Don't lie to me, he shouted, spit flying from his mouth. I saw the card, the black one Mom used. Housekeepers do not have Centurion cards. You are skimming, aren't you? You are stealing from him too. I felt a presence behind me. Bernice had entered the kitchen, drawn by the shouting. She looked from Marcus to me, her eyes landing on the papers. What is going on here? She asked. Marcus turned to her, his face flushed with triumph. Nia has been holding out on us, Mom. She has money, or access to it, and she is refusing to help her family. Bernice looked at me, her expression hardening into that familiar mask of disappointment. Is this true? Nia? Your brother is in trouble. Serious trouble. If you have the means to help him, you have a moral obligation to do so. It is what family does. He is asking me to steal Mother, I said. He wants me to take $50,000 from my employer. So what? Bernice snapped. He is rich. He will not miss it. Marcus needs it. He is your brother. He is the future of this family. If he goes to jail, it ruins everything. Think about the shame, Nia. Think about what people at church will say. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a manipulative whisper. I gave you life. I raised you. I put a roof over your head for 18 years. Do you not think you owe me something for that? Helping your brother is paying your debt to me. It is the least you can do after all the grief you have caused us. The grief I caused. Not the grief of being called a mistake. Not the grief of being homeless at 18. No, my existence was the grief. I looked at them. My mother justifying theft with scripture. My brother threatening his sister with prison to save his own skin. They were not family, they were a syndicate. Fine, I said, letting my shoulders slump in defeat. You win. I will help you. Marcus grinned, snatching the papers back up. I knew you would come around. Smart girl. Now where is the cash? I do not have cash, I said. And I cannot just withdraw that much without triggering an alert. But there is another way. I walked over to the junk drawer, the one where I kept menus and spare keys, and pulled out a thick cream-colored envelope. It was embossed with gold lettering. The owner, Mr. Blackwood, is going to be at a party tomorrow night, I lied, using the alias I had created for the owner. The Business Innovators Gala. It is the biggest event of the year. He keeps a slush fund in his safe at the office for discreet transactions. I held out the envelope. Inside were 4 VIP tickets to the gala. Tickets that cost $5,000 each. Tickets I had reserved for my executive team but repurposed for this moment. He will be there, I said. He will be in the VIP lounge. If you go there, if you show him these papers, he might pay you. He might pay you just to keep you quiet. Marcus took the envelope, his greed overcoming his suspicion. He opened it and looked at the tickets. The ultimate business gala, he read. Black tie, open bar. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing. Why are you giving us these? Why don't you just ask him? Because he won't listen to a maid, I said. But he will listen to a man in a suit who has leverage. You said you wanted to make a deal, Marcus. This is your chance. You can walk right up to him and demand your money. Marcus smiled slowly. He liked that idea. He liked the idea of being a player, of forcing a rich man to bend the knee. I can do that, he said, tucking the tickets into his jacket pocket. I can definitely do that. Becky is going to love this. A party, champagne, and a payday. He turned to Bernice. Get your best dress ready, Mom. We are going out, and tomorrow night we are going to be rich. Bernice beamed, clapping her hands together. Oh, praise God, I knew he would provide a way. A gala. I need to get my hair done. Nia, do you have a steamer? My silk dress is wrinkled. I watched them celebrate their impending doom. They were so happy, so confident. They were going to walk into a room filled with the most powerful people in the city, people who knew my face, people who knew my story, and they were going to try to blackmail a ghost. I smiled, a small sad thing. I will get the steamer, Mom, I said. You want to look your best when you meet the boss. I turned back to the stove. The salmon was burnt. It didn't matter. I had bigger fish to fry. Ah, the invitation on the desk before you came in. The Business Innovators Gala. He is going to be there, right? I nodded slowly. Yes, he will be there. Good, Marcus said. Then we are going too. You are going to get us in, and I am going to make my deal face to face. He walked out of the room whistling. Clarence followed him, casting one last guilty look at me before hurrying away to safe ground. I stood alone in my office. The tears stopped instantly. I straightened my spine. I walked over to the desk and placed the folder back in the center, perfectly aligned. You want to meet the boss, Marcus? I whispered. You want to make a deal? I looked at the camera hidden in the smoke detector and winked. Be careful what you wish for. The house smelled of burnt hairspray and desperation. My family had turned my living room into a staging area for their grand entrance into high society. They had hired a mobile glam squad using my credit card, of course. 3 women in black t-shirts were currently hovering over Becky and my mother, applying layers of foundation thick enough to hide their souls. I stood in the corner holding a garment steamer that was currently working overtime on Marcus's rented tuxedo. He had insisted on a white dinner jacket, apparently thinking he was James Bond, but he looked more like a valet parking attendant who had stolen a jacket from the lost and found. Make me look expensive, Becky commanded the makeup artist, snapping her fingers. I want that glow that says I do not look at price tags. And do something about my eyes. They look tired. It is the stress of dealing with incompetent staff. She shot a glare at me through the mirror. I ignored it, focusing on the steam rising from the polyester blend of Marcus's pants. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from American Express. Another charge. $5,000. Limousine service. They had not just ordered a car. They had ordered a stretch Hummer. A vehicle so tacky and outdated it perfectly matched their delusions of grandeur. Bernice was sitting in the other chair, having her hair teased into a helmet of curls. She was holding a glass of my champagne, barking orders at the poor girl, trying to attach false eyelashes to her eyelids. "Careful, girl," Bernice snapped. "Those are mink. Do not get glue on them. We are going to the event of the season. I need to look like the mother of a CEO." I bit the inside of my cheek. Marcus was a CEO of nothing but a shell company and a mountain of debt. But in their minds, tonight was the coronation. They were going to walk into that gala, blackmail a billionaire, and walk out with a briefcase full of cash. It was a fantasy so fragile I almost felt bad for shattering it. Almost. When the hair and makeup were done, the stylists packed up and left, looking relieved to escape the toxic atmosphere. I tipped them in cash on their way out, slipping the bills into their hands with a silent apology. They looked at me with pity. They thought I was the downtrodden servant. They had no idea I was the one signing their checks. Now came the wardrobe. Becky had gone shopping again yesterday, maxing out the card I had foolishly left on the counter. She had bought a gold sequined gown that was 2 sizes too small and a pair of platform heels that looked like weapons. She waddled into the living room, the sequins scratching against each other with a sound like sandpaper. "Zip me up, Nia," she demanded, turning her back to me. "And be careful with the zipper. This is designer." It was not designer. It was a knockoff she had bought at a boutique in the mall. But I did not correct her. I walked over and pulled the zipper up. It strained against the fabric, fighting a losing battle against her physique. "There," she said, spinning around and nearly knocking over a vase. "How do I look? Like money, right?" "You look noticeable," I said. "Good," she said, taking it as a compliment. "Now you." She pointed at a pile of clothes on the floor. It was a gray, shapeless sack of a dress. It looked like something a prison matron would wear in a black and white movie. "Put that on," she said. I stared at it. "Excuse me. You are coming with us," she said. "I need someone to hold my train. This dress has a train, see? And I need someone to hold my purse while I drink champagne. And someone to run and get Marcus when he is done making his deal. You are the help, Nia. You need to look the part." She kicked the gray dress toward me. "I bought that for you at the thrift store. It fits your vibe. Sad. Invisible. Put it on. We do not want people confusing you for a guest." I looked at my mother. Surely even she would have a limit. Surely she would not let her daughter go out in public looking like a Dickensian orphan while she paraded around in silk. Bernice looked at the dress, then at me. She took a sip of champagne and shrugged. "Becky is right, Nia. We cannot have you clashing with us. We are making a statement tonight. You need to fade into the background. Wear the gray dress, and pull your hair back. You look messy when it is loose. And one more thing," Bernice added, her voice sharpening. "When we get there, you stay in the service area. Do not try to talk to the guests. Do not try to eat the food. And for the love of God, do not tell anyone you are my daughter. If anyone asks, you are just staff. I do not want to explain why my child looks like a charity case." I picked up the gray dress. The fabric was rough and smelled of mothballs. It was the ultimate insult. They wanted to parade me around as their servant. They wanted to show the world that I was beneath them. "I will go change," I said quietly. I walked into the laundry room and closed the door. I stripped off my leggings and sweater and pulled the gray sack over my head. It hung on me like a burlap bag. It was hideous. It was perfect. I looked at myself in the small mirror above the utility sink. I saw a woman who looked defeated. I saw a woman who looked like she had given up. But then I looked closer. I looked into my own eyes. They were cold. They were hard. They were the eyes of a predator waiting in the tall grass. I smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "You want a servant," I whispered to my reflection. "I will give you a servant. I will serve you a plate of cold, hard reality, and I will make you choke on it. I reached into the hidden compartment behind the washing machine. I pulled out a garment bag. Inside was my dress for the night. A custom-made couture gown, sleek and black, with a neckline that plunged and a slit that went up to my thigh. It was a power suit disguised as a dress. It was worth more than the entire wardrobe my family was currently wearing. I also pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a diamond necklace. Real diamonds. Not the paste Becky was wearing. I stashed the garment bag and the jewelry box in a duffel bag that I would carry with me. I would change at the venue. I would transform. But for now, I had a role to play. I walked back out into the living room. Becky clapped her hands when she saw me. "Oh, it is perfect," she squealed. "You look so drab. You make me shine even brighter." "We are ready," Marcus announced, walking in. He had slicked his hair back with so much gel it looked wet. He adjusted his cufflinks, trying to look important. "The limo is here. Let us go make some money." We walked out to the driveway. The stretch Hummer was idling there, a monstrosity of white metal and neon lights. It looked ridiculous parked in front of my elegant estate. The driver opened the door. Marcus and Becky climbed in first, fighting over the best seat. Bernice followed, checking her reflection in the window one last time. Clarence got in last, looking nervous but hopeful. I climbed in the back, sitting on the small jump seat near the door, the servant's seat. As the limo pulled away, Becky popped a bottle of champagne she had brought from the house. "To us," she toasted, clinking glasses with Marcus. "To the future." "To the future," Marcus agreed, grinning. "To the big leagues." Bernice looked at me, huddled in my gray dress. "Try not to look so miserable, Naya," she scolded. "You are getting a free ride in a limousine. You should be grateful. Most girls in your position never get to see the inside of a car like this." "I am very grateful, Mother," I said, lowering my head. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I kept it hidden under the folds of the gray dress. I opened my secure messaging app. I typed a message to the head of security at the gala. His name was David. He used to be Secret Service. He answered to me. "Plan B," I typed. "The targets are inbound. White Hummer limo. Let them through the VIP entrance. Do not check their tickets. Do not stop them. Let them walk the red carpet. I want them to feel like royalty." I hit send. A moment later, a reply came through. "Understood, Ms. Wilson. The trap is set. See you on the stage." I put the phone away. I looked out the window at the passing city lights. They were laughing. They were drinking my wine. They were celebrating a victory that hadn't happened yet. They were driving to their own execution, and they had rented the hearse. The white stretch Hummer pulled up to the curb like a beached whale amidst a sea of sleek black town cars and limousines. The valet looked at the neon underglow of the chassis with visible distaste, but opened the door with professional stoicism. Marcus stepped out first, adjusting his white dinner jacket with a flourish that he must have thought looked debonair, but actually made him resemble a cruise ship magician. He extended a hand to Becky, who tumbled out in a cloud of cheap perfume and sequins, her heels scraping violently against the pavement. Bernice followed, waving to the photographers who had gathered near the entrance. A few flashbulbs popped instinctively before the paparazzi lowered their cameras, realizing these people were nobody. My mother did not let that stop her. She preened and posed, blowing kisses to an audience that was already looking past her to the actual celebrities arriving behind us. I climbed out last, dragging Becky's heavy purse and my own duffel bag. I kept my head down, clutching the rough fabric of my gray dress tight around me. I was the shadow in their spotlight, the stain on their perfect picture. "Move faster," Naya Becky hissed over her shoulder. "You are ruining the aesthetic. Stay at least 10 feet back. I do not want people thinking we are together." I fell back, obeying her command. We walked up the red carpet, a procession of delusion. Inside the grand ballroom was a world of gold leaf crystal and hushed conversations. The air smelled of money, old money, quiet money. My family entered like a brass band in a library. "Oh, look at this," Bernice announced, her voice carrying over the polite murmur of the crowd. "It is nice, But a bit understated, don't you think? I would have used more flowers. She reached out and touched the sleeve of a passing woman, a renowned philanthropist I recognized from the board of the art museum. Honey, that fabric is daring, Bernice said with a condescending smile. Polyester blend. The woman looked at my mother with an expression one might reserve for a talking dog, then simply turned and walked away without a word. Bernice huffed, smoothing her own synthetic skirt. Rude, she muttered. Some people have no class. Marcus was on a mission. He was scanning the room with frantic eyes, ignoring the architecture and the art. He was looking for a victim. He grabbed a waiter by the arm, nearly causing the man to drop a tray of caviar. "Hey, buddy," Marcus said loud enough for half the room to hear. "I am looking for Mr. Blackwood." Big guy, rich, probably surrounded by security. Point him out. The waiter gently removed Marcus's hand from his sleeve. "I am not aware of a Mr. Blackwood, sir," he said coolly. "Perhaps you should check the guest list." Marcus released him with a shove. "Useless. Nia, where is he?" "You said he would be here." "He is in the VIP section," I whispered, pointing toward the balcony that overlooked the ballroom. "He does not come down for the general mixer. You have to wait." "I am not waiting," Marcus snapped. "I have business to conduct." He started pushing his way through the crowd, heading toward the stairs that led to the VIP level. Becky trotted after him, grabbing 2 glasses of champagne from a passing tray and downing one in a single gulp. "This is weak," she complained loudly. "I bet they keep the good stuff upstairs." "Come on, Nia, keep up." I followed them, my eyes darting around the room. I saw Jasmine standing near the bar, talking to the CEO of a major tech firm. She caught my eye and gave a subtle nod. The trap was primed. We reached the center of the room where the crowd was thickest. A woman was standing there talking to a senator. She was wearing a vintage Valentino gown that was a work of art. It was Eleanor Vance, the wife of my rival Desmond. Becky, not watching where she was going, spun around to look for a photographer. Her elbow flailed out and the full glass of champagne in her hand launched itself forward. The liquid splashed across the front of Eleanor's gown, soaking the delicate silk. The room went silent. Eleanor gasped, looking down at the ruin of her dress. Becky froze. For a second, I thought she might apologize. I thought she might show a shred of human decency. But then I saw the panic in her eyes and the familiar, cruel calculation. She whirled around and pointed a finger straight at my face. "You clumsy idiot!" she shrieked. "Look what you did!" I stood there blinking. I was 5 feet away from her. I had not moved. "She tripped me," Becky shouted to the room at large. "My maid! She is so clumsy. She tripped me and made me spill my drink." She turned to Eleanor, her face a mask of fake contrition. "I am so sorry. Good help is so hard to find these days. We try to give them chances, but they are just animals." Nia apologized to the lady. "Get on your knees and clean that up right now." My mother stepped forward, sensing a moment to assert her status. "It is true," she chimed in. "Our girl is very simple. She does not know how to behave in polite society. We are mortified." "Nia, clean it up." The injustice of it burned in my throat like acid. I looked at Eleanor. She was not looking at Becky. She was looking at me. She was a smart woman. She saw the distance. She saw the malice. And she saw something in my eyes that made her pause. I stepped forward. I did not get on my knees. I reached into the pocket of my gray dress and pulled out a silk handkerchief. I offered it to Eleanor. "I apologize for the disturbance, madam," I said, my voice low and steady. "Accidents happen when people are careless." Eleanor took the handkerchief, her eyes locked with mine. "Thank you," she said, and she turned her back on Becky, cutting her out of existence as effectively as a knife. Becky turned purple. She opened her mouth to scream again, but Marcus grabbed her arm. "Forget it," he hissed. "We have bigger fish to fry. Come on." They marched away, leaving me standing there. I watched them go. They were heading for the stage. They wanted to be front and center when the host appeared. They wanted to be the first ones seen. I checked my watch. It was time. I slipped away from the center of the room, moving toward the heavy velvet curtains that concealed the backstage entrance. I handed my duffel bag to David, the head of security, who was waiting in the shadows. "Is everything ready?" I asked. David nodded. "The microphone is live, the presentation is cued, and your family is in position A." "Good," I said. I stepped behind the curtain. I stripped off the gray sack of a dress, leaving it in a pile on the floor. I opened the garment bag. The black couture gown slid over my skin like armor. I fastened the diamond necklace around my throat. I let my hair down, shaking out the curls. I applied a coat of blood-red lipstick. I looked in the mirror. The maid was gone. The mistake was gone. Only the CEO remained. Out in the ballroom, the lights suddenly dimmed, plunging the room into darkness. A hush fell over the crowd. A single spotlight cut through the gloom, searching the stage. My family was standing right at the edge of the platform, looking around in confusion. "Where is he?" Marcus muttered loud enough to be heard in the silence. "Where is Blackwood?" Then the voice of the MC boomed through the speakers, reverberating off the walls. "Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome to the Night of Innovation. It is my distinct honor to introduce your host for the evening." The spotlight moved, sweeping across the room. She is the founder of Helix Solutions, the architect of the Medicore acquisition, the youngest self-made titan in the industry. Marcus froze. He looked at Bernice. Bernice looked at Clarence. "Helix Solutions," Marcus whispered. "That is the company I—" "Please welcome," the MC roared, "the businesswoman of the year, the chairwoman of the board, Ms. Nia Wilson." The spotlight snapped to the top of the stairs. I stepped out of the shadows. The diamonds at my throat caught the light, blazing like fire. I looked down at the crowd. I looked down at the sea of faces turned up toward me. And right in the front row, illuminated by the spill of the light, I saw them. I saw Marcus's jaw drop unhinged. I saw Becky clutch her fake purse to her chest. I saw my mother's eyes bug out of her head. I smiled. It was the smile of a wolf who had just found the sheep sleeping in her den. I started down the stairs, my heels ringing out like a gavel striking a sounding block. "Hello, family," I thought. "School is in session." The spotlight was blinding white and hot against my skin, but I did not blink. I stood at the top of the grand staircase, looking down at the ballroom floor like a queen surveying her kingdom. The silence in the room was absolute, a physical weight that pressed against the eardrums of every person present. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the frantic beating of my own heart, which had finally synchronized with the rhythm of my vengeance. I took the first step down. The slit in my black couture gown parted, revealing a leg that my mother had always criticized as too thick, but which now looked powerful in the stiletto heel. The diamonds around my neck felt cool and heavy, a collar of ice that reminded me to stay cold. Every eye in the room was fixed on me, but I only cared about 4 of them. I locked eyes with Marcus. He was standing near the edge of the stage, his mouth hanging open in a rictus of shock. The glass of champagne he had been holding slipped from his fingers. It hit the marble floor with a sharp, crystalline shatter that echoed through the silent room like a gunshot. The sound seemed to break the spell for a fraction of a second, causing people to jump, but no one looked away from me. The champagne pooled around Marcus's cheap rental shoes, soaking into the hem of his trousers, but he did not move. He could not move. His brain was trying to process the impossible image in front of him. The sister he had called a maid 5 minutes ago was now standing above him, draped in $50,000 of silk and prestige. I continued my descent, my heels clicking a steady, ominous tempo on the stairs. I saw my mother clutching her purse to her chest, as if it could protect her from the reality crashing down on her. Her eyes were bulging, her face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. She looked at my dress. She looked at my jewelry. She looked at the way the light seemed to bend around me, and I saw the moment she realized that the gray dress in the laundry room had been a costume. This was the reality. I reached the bottom of the stairs and walked to the center of the stage. The microphone stand was waiting for me. I gripped the chrome metal, feeling the vibration of the sound system humming under my fingertips. I looked out at the sea of faces, the investors, the competitors, the press. I saw Desmond Vance in the second row, his face pale, his arrogance replaced by a grudging respect and a flicker of fear. He knew what was happening. He knew the game had just changed. "Welcome," I said, my voice booming through the speakers, crisp and authoritative. "Thank you all for joining us tonight to celebrate innovation, resilience, and the power of truth." I paused, letting the words settle. Then I turned slowly, deliberately, until I was facing the small cluster of people standing frozen near the VIP entrance, my family. I see we have some unexpected guests," I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming intimate and dangerous. Some people who thought they were crashing a party, but were actually walking into a lesson. I walked to the edge of the stage, looking down at them. I was 10 feet above them now, physically and metaphorically. "Mother," I said into the microphone. Bernice flinched as if I had struck her. The sound of her title, amplified to 1,000 decibels, seemed to shrink her. "You told your prayer circle I was a mistake," I continued, my eyes boring into hers. "You told the church this morning that I was a servant. You told my sister-in-law that I was only good for cleaning up messes. You spent 18 years telling me I was worthless, and the last 12 years telling the world I was a failure." I took a step closer to the edge. "You called me the family mistake. But look around you, Mother. Look at this room. Look at these people. They are not here for Marcus. They are not here for you. They are here for me." I swept my arm across the vista of the ballroom. "Tonight, I am not a mistake. Tonight, I am not a servant. Tonight, I am the person who owns this room. I am the person who owns the company you stole from. And I am the person who owns the house you have been sleeping in." A gasp rippled through the crowd. I heard whispers breaking out like small fires. The press photographers who had been waiting for a cue suddenly exploded into action, flashbulbs popping like lightning storms. Becky looked like she was going to be sick. She looked down at her stolen shoes, then up at my face, realizing that every insult she had hurled at me, every demand for warm milk, every sneer about my skin, had been delivered to the woman who held the deed to her temporary paradise. She grabbed Marcus's arm, her fingernails digging into his sleeve. Marcus, however, was trying to salvage the situation. His greed was stronger than his shock. He remembered the folder. He remembered the leverage he thought he had. He shook off Becky's hand and took a step toward the stage, reaching into his jacket pocket. "You think you are clever, Nia?" he shouted, his voice cracking without amplification, but still audible in the front rows. "You think a fancy dress changes anything? I know your secrets. I have the papers." He pulled out the red folder, waving it in the air like a weapon. "I have proof," he yelled, turning to the crowd, desperate for attention. "She is dirty. This woman is a criminal. She is engaging in corporate espionage. I have the documents right here. I will sell them to the highest bidder. Who wants to know what Helix Solutions is really doing?" The crowd murmured, but it was a sound of confusion, not intrigue. They looked at him like he was a madman. I laughed. It was a low, genuine sound of amusement. "Oh, Marcus," I said, speaking into the mic with pity. "You really did not read those papers, did you? You just saw the confidential stamp and saw dollar signs." I signaled to the tech booth at the back of the room. "Those are not espionage documents, brother. Those are bait. I planted them for you. I knew you would break into my office. I knew you would try to steal them, and I knew you would bring them here thinking you could blackmail a stranger." Marcus stopped waving the folder. He looked at it, then back at me, his face draining of color. "But you made a mistake," I said. "You thought you were stealing from a stranger. You were stealing from me. And in your rush to be a big shot, you missed the most important part of the story." I gestured to the massive LED screen behind me. It had been displaying the Helix logo, a spinning double helix of blue light. Now it went black. "You wanted to be famous, Marcus?" I said, my voice hard as steel. "You wanted everyone to know your name. You wanted to be a player in this industry. Well, I am a generous sister. I am going to give you exactly what you wanted." I raised my hand and snapped my fingers. The screen behind me blazed to life. It was not a logo this time. It was a photograph. High resolution, crystal clear. It was a photo of Marcus sitting in my wine cellar holding the bottle of Chateau Petrus. But it was not just a photo. It was a video. The audio boomed through the hall. I created a few vendors that did not exist. Marcus's voice slurred over the speakers, magnified for 500 people to hear. Helix Logistics, Alpha Supply. I routed the payments to accounts I control in the Caymans. The crowd gasped. I saw investors covering their mouths. I saw Desmond Vance laughing, shaking his head in disbelief. On the screen, the video, Marcus took another drink. I moved the decimal points on the inventory sheets to cover the loss. They thought they were paying for premium surgical steel. They were paying for air. Marcus on the floor dropped the red folder. The papers scattered across the red carpet like dead leaves. He looked up at the screen, watching his own confession play out in high definition. I signaled the booth again. The image changed. Now it was a split screen. On one side was a bank transfer record showing $200,000 moving from Medicor to MW Global. On the other side was a document signed by Marcus Wilson admitting to the transfers disguised as a non-disclosure agreement. "And this, ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, "is the chief financial officer my mother is so proud of. This is the evidence of wire fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny committed against my company." I looked down at my mother. She was shaking her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. She looked at the screen, then at Marcus, then at me. "Nia," she mouthed the word silent in the roar of the room. "Please." I did not show mercy. I did not show hesitation. I looked straight into the camera that was broadcasting the event to the local news feed. "My name is Nia Wilson," I said. "I am the CEO of Helix Solutions, and I am pressing charges. Based on the dramatic style and narrative flow established in the previous parts, here is Part 13, Handcuffs and Chaos of the Story." I lowered the microphone, but I did not step back. The silence that had filled the room following my declaration shattered instantly as the double doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. It was not the polite entry of late guests. It was the synchronized, heavy-footed arrival of authority. 6 uniformed police officers and 4 agents in windbreakers emblazoned with FBI entered the space, their presence turning the gala into a crime scene. I watched Marcus. The arrogance that had defined him for 34 years evaporated in a heartbeat, replaced by the primal terror of a trapped animal. He looked at the agents, then at the screen still displaying his drunken confession, and finally at me. His eyes bulged, veins popping in his neck as the reality of his situation took hold. He was not leaving this room a rich man. He was leaving it a felon. "You set me up!" he screamed, his voice cracking into a high-pitched shriek that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. "You planned this. You let me do it." He lunged. It was a desperate, foolish move born of pure panic. He scrambled up the few steps to the stage, his hands reaching for my throat, his face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. The crowd gasped, surging back, but I did not flinch. I did not need to. David, my head of security, moved with the speed of a striking cobra. Before Marcus could even cross the midway point of the stage, David intercepted him. A heavy shoulder slammed into Marcus's chest, lifting him off his feet and driving him into the floorboards with a bone-jarring thud. The breath left my brother's body in a wheezing gasp. Before he could scramble up, David had a knee in his back and his arm twisted painfully behind him. "Stay down!" David commanded, his voice calm and professional amidst the chaos. "Do not move." 2 officers rushed the stage, zip ties in hand. I watched as they hauled Marcus up his white dinner jacket, now scuffed and twisted, his face pressed against the stage floor. As they yanked his arms back to secure his wrists, he looked up at me one last time. There was no remorse in his eyes, only a promise of violence that he would never be able to keep. "Get off me," he spat, thrashing uselessly against the officers. "Nia, tell them to stop. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I am your brother. You cannot let them take me." I looked down at him, smoothing the silk of my gown. "I do not have a brother," I said, my voice amplified by the microphone I still held. "I have an employee who stole from me. And I have a trespasser who broke into my home. Take him away." As they dragged him off the stage, kicking and screaming like a toddler denied a toy, the focus shifted to the floor. Becky was trying to blend into the crowd, inching backward toward the exit, her stolen sequined dress shimmering under the house lights. She had abandoned Marcus the moment he hit the floor, her loyalty extending only as far as his utility. But she was not going anywhere. 2 officers cut off her path, blocking the exit. "Rebecca Wilson," one of them said, his voice carrying over the din. "Me," she squeaked, clutching her fake purse to her chest. "I did not do anything. This is a mistake. My husband is the one you want. I am just a guest. I am pregnant. You cannot touch me." The officer held up a tablet. On the screen was a still image from the hidden camera in my master bedroom. It showed Becky clear as day, slipping my grandmother's diamond tennis bracelet into the lining of her bra. "We have video evidence of grand larceny," the officer stated flatly. "Theft of jewelry valued at over $15,000 plus destruction of property and credit card fraud. You are under arrest." "No!" she shrieked as he reached for her arm. "That bracelet was a gift. Nia gave it to me. She told me I could have it. She is lying. She is jealous because I am pretty, and she is just the help." The officer spun her around, forcing her hands behind her back. The metal cuffs clicked shut, a sound of finality that cut through her hysteria. "You have the right to remain silent," the officer recited, though Becky showed no intention of exercising it. She wailed, a sound of pure entitlement being crushed as they marched her past the stunned faces of Atlanta's elite. I watched her go. I watched the woman who had mocked my skin, who had treated my home like a hotel, who had called me a maid in my own kitchen, being led away in disgrace. She wanted to be the center of attention. Now she was. Then there were my parents. Bernice and Clarence stood alone in the center of the clearing the crowd had made. They looked small. They looked old. The facade of the prosperous, pious family had been stripped away, leaving 2 terrified people staring at the wreckage of their lives. Bernice looked at the stage where Marcus had been dragged away. She looked at the exit where Becky was disappearing. Then she looked up at me. Her face was a ruin of running mascara and shock. She took a stumbling step toward the stage, her hands reaching out, grasping at the air. "Nia," she sobbed, her voice raw. "Stop this. Please. He is your brother. That is your family. You cannot let them go to prison. You have to stop them. You have the money. You can pay it back. You can fix this." I walked to the edge of the stage. I looked down at her. For the first time in my life, I was looking down at her, not just physically, but in every way that mattered. "Fix it," I repeated, my voice devoid of warmth. "You want me to fix it. Like you fixed me when I was 18. Like you fixed my self-esteem when you told everyone I was a failure." Clarence stepped up beside her, his face gray. "Nia, be reasonable," he pleaded, his voice shaking. "We are your parents. We raised you. You cannot destroy us like this. Think about what people will say. Think about the church. The church." I laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "You are worried about the church. You just watched your son get arrested for federal crimes, and you are worried about the gossip circle." I descended the stairs. The crowd parted for me, giving me a wide berth. I walked up to my parents until I was standing toe-to-toe with them. I could smell the fear on them. It smelled like sweat and cheap hairspray. Bernice grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. "Baby, please," she begged. dropping her voice to a frantic whisper. We made a mistake. We know that now. We are sorry. We will do better. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you gave Marcus permission. You can save him. You are the only one who can save him. I looked at her hand on my arm, the same hand that had slapped me when I said I wanted to start a business, the same hand that had pointed to the door 12 years ago. I gently but firmly peeled her fingers off my skin. I held her hand for a second, feeling the tremors running through her, and then I let it drop. I am not going to save him, Mother, I said softly so only she could hear, and I am not going to save you. You made your bed when you decided I was a mistake. Now you have to lie in it. But we have nowhere to go. She wept, her composure completely gone. The house we lost, the house years ago. We have no money. Marcus was our only hope. If he goes to jail, if you kick us out, we will be on the street. I leaned in close. I brought my lips right next to her ear, the way a daughter might share a secret with a beloved mother. You want my help? I whispered. You want me to do something for you? She nodded frantically, hope flaring in her eyes. Yes, baby. Please. Just help us. Fine, I said, my voice like ice. I will help you. I pulled back and looked her in the eye. I will help you find the address for the nearest homeless shelter. I hear they have openings in the basement. I turned my back on them. I heard my mother scream my name, a sound of pure anguish, but I did not stop. I walked back toward the stage, toward my team, toward my future. I signaled to David. Get them out of here, I said, and change the locks on the estate tonight. If they step foot on my property again, arrest them for trespassing. David nodded. He and 2 other guards moved in, flanking my parents. I did not watch them being escorted out. I did not need to. I had seen enough. The show was over, the lesson had been taught, and class was dismissed. 3 months later, winter arrived in Atlanta, not with snow but with a biting chill that seeped into the bones. It was the kind of cold that exposed every crack in a foundation, the kind that made you grateful for warmth and shelter. From the window of my corner office at Helix Solutions, I watched the city hustle below, unaware of the personal war I had finally won. The legal system had moved with terrifying speed, fueled by the mountain of evidence Jasmine and I had provided. Marcus stood before a federal judge just last week. The white dinner jacket was gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. He had lost weight. He had lost his hair. And when the gavel fell, sentencing him to 10 years in federal prison for wire fraud and embezzlement, he lost his composure. He wailed like a child, looking back at the gallery for a mother who could no longer save him. There was no parole in the federal system. He would serve every day of his sentence. He would be 44 years old when he tasted freedom again, and by then the world would have forgotten the name Marcus Wilson. Becky's fate was perhaps even more tragic because it involved an innocent life. She went into labor 2 weeks after her arrest. She gave birth in a guarded ward at Grady Memorial Hospital, shackled to the bed frame. Her parents, a wealthy couple from Buckhead, who I had never met, finally emerged from the woodwork, not to save her but to salvage their reputation. They petitioned the court for full custody of the child, citing Becky's criminal status and unstable environment. They won. They took the baby and served Becky with legal notice that she was no longer considered part of their family. She was transferred to a minimum security facility to serve 3 years for grand larceny and identity theft. She had lost her freedom, her child, and her status in one fell swoop. The last time I saw her mugshot on the news, she looked aged and hollow, the arrogance scrubbed away by the harsh soap of reality. Then there were my parents. The restitution hearing had been brutal. Since they had knowingly benefited from Marcus's theft, using stolen funds for luxury goods and lifestyle expenses, the court held them liable for repayment. They had no assets. They had no savings. The court garnished their Social Security and seized every item of value they had managed to hide. They were evicted from their rental unit the same week Marcus was sentenced. I heard through the grapevine that they had found a place in East Point, a dilapidated one-bedroom apartment in a complex known for mold and sirens. But rent still had to be paid. Status does not pay the electric bill. So Bernice Wilson, the woman who wore feathered hats to church and looked down on the working class, had to go to work. I drove my new Rolls-Royce Cullinan through the city streets, the heated leather seat keeping the winter chill at bay. I was heading to a site inspection for a new distribution center, but I decided to take a detour. I needed to see it. I needed to close the book. I pulled up to a rundown diner on the outskirts of town. The neon sign flickered, buzzing ominously. The windows were greasy. Inside, I could see the lunch rush in full swing. And there, in the back, visible through the service window, was my father Clarence wearing a hairnet and scraping leftovers into a trash can. He looked broken. His posture was slumped, his eyes dull. But it was the front of the house that caught my attention. A woman was wiping down a table near the window. She wore a stained apron over a faded dress. Her hair, once teased and sprayed into a helmet of perfection, was flat and gray, tied back with a rubber band. It was Bernice. She looked up as my car idled at the curb. The Rolls-Royce was impossible to miss, a gleaming black fortress in a parking lot full of rusted sedans. She squinted through the glass, trying to see who was inside. I lowered the tinted window. Her eyes went wide. She dropped her rag. For a moment, she just stared, frozen by the sight of me. Then she moved. She ran out of the diner, pushing past a customer entering the door. She rushed toward my car, her apron flapping in the cold wind. "Nia!" she cried out, her voice cracking. "Nia, baby, is that you?" She reached the car and grabbed the door handle, pulling uselessly against the lock. She pressed her face close to the glass. She looked old. The lines around her mouth were deep, etched by bitterness and defeat. "Oh, God. Nia, look at you," she sobbed. "You look so good. Please, you have to help us. Your father, his back is giving out. We cannot live like this. The apartment has rats, Nia." Rats. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had thrown me out into the rain when I was 18. I looked at the woman who had mocked my cooking, called me a failure, and tried to steal my fortune. I felt nothing. No anger, no pity. Just a cold, hollow silence where a daughter's love used to be. "We are sorry," she pleaded, tears streaking the grease on her cheeks. "We know we were wrong. We learned our lesson. Just give us something. Anything. A few $1,000s. You have so much. You won't even miss it. Please, Nia. We are your family." Family. That word again. I reached into my designer purse sitting on the passenger seat. Bernice's eyes followed my movement, lighting up with a desperate hunger. She thought I was reaching for my checkbook. She thought I was reaching for a stack of cash. Instead, I pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside was a piece of paper, old and yellowed with age. I had carried it with me for 12 years. It was a receipt. I rolled the window down a few more inches. The cold air rushed in, biting my face. "Do you remember the night you kicked me out?" "Mother?" I asked, my voice calm and steady. She blinked, confused. "What?" "That was a long time ago, baby. Let us not dwell on the past. I had $32 in my pocket." I continued, ignoring her. "That was everything I had to my name. You told me I would never amount to anything. You told me I was a mistake." "Nia, please," she begged. I opened the plastic bag and took out the receipt. It was from a pawn shop, dated 12 years ago. It was for a locket my grandmother gave me, the only thing of value I had owned. I had pawned it for $32 to buy a bus ticket and a sandwich. I uncrumpled the paper and smoothed it out. I reached into my wallet and pulled out exactly $32, a 20, a 10, and 2 ones. I wrapped the cash in the old receipt. "I drove all the way here to give you this," I said. I tossed the wad of bills out the window. The wind caught them, fluttering them onto the dirty pavement at her feet. Bernice scrambled for them, falling to her knees on the asphalt to catch the bills before they blew away. She clutched the money to her chest like it was a lifeline. "That is $32, I said, looking down at her. "That is what you gave me. That is what I was worth to you. She looked up at me, clutching the dirty money, her eyes filled with confusion and anguish. But Nia, this won't even cover the electric bill. Then I guess you better get back to wiping tables, I said. I hear the lunch rush is busy. I pressed the button and the window rolled up, sealing me back inside my warm, silent world. I put the car in drive. As I pulled away, I watched in the rearview mirror. Bernice was still on her knees in the parking lot, holding the $32, crying into the cold winter wind. Clarence had come to the window of the diner, watching her, but he did not come out. He knew it was over. I turned the corner and the diner disappeared from view. I turned on the radio. A jazz song filled the cabin, smooth and sophisticated. I adjusted the heat. I checked my schedule. I had a board meeting at 2 and a dinner date at 7. My life was full. My life was mine. The winter was cold, but inside the car it felt like spring. I drove on, leaving the mistake behind me, finally corrected. This story teaches a brutal but liberating truth: shared DNA is not a license for abuse. Nia's journey from a cast-off teenager to a titan of industry proves that your value is intrinsic, never defined by those who fail to see it. The most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be the victim in someone else's narrative. Success is the best revenge, but boundaries are the ultimate freedom. You do not owe your abusers a second chance, no matter how much they beg. Sometimes you have to close the door to save yourself. CTA. If you believe in the power of setting boundaries and claiming your own worth, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of resilience.